The glow from my laptop screen was the only light in my apartment, painting my hands pale blue as I clicked through slides for the third time. The city hummed outside the open window, low and constant, like the deep breath of some massive sleeping thing. Somewhere down below, a car horn blared, impatient. I rubbed my temples, trying to focus on the financial projection graph in front of me. And then, buzz. Buzz. Buzz buzz. My phone skittered across the desk from the force of its own vibration. I glanced at the screen, Business Innovators 2020. The alumni group chat. Normally, it was quiet after midnight, the occasional link to some tech article, a congratulatory post about promotions. But tonight, the notifications stacked like falling bricks. I picked up the phone, thumb hesitating over the screen before I swiped it open. The first thing I saw was Leo's name. Leo Zhang, excited to join Ardent Corp starting Monday. Big things ahead, rocket fire. I read it once. Then again. The words didn't change. Neither did the flood of responses. Maya C. OMG, congrats. You'll kill it there. Tobias W. Wow, dream team now smiling face with sunglasses. GIF, Robert Downey Jr. clapping. Ardent Corp official, voice note, we've been waiting for the best, and we just got him. Ardent Corp. The name hit me in the chest like a dull hammer. My stomach went tight, cold spreading up my spine. They were the rival in our field, the shark circling every emerging venture. And Leo, my friend since high school, the one who sat with me on a freezing rooftop 3 years ago making a pact, was joining them. The voice note played automatically. A smooth baritone, all confidence. Ethan Voss, hope you're ready to burn the midnight oil, Zhang. Welcome to the big leagues. Ethan Voss. The golden boy CEO heir of Ardent Corp. Flawless hair, that smug smirk that made every glossy magazine cover, and apparently the gravitational pull to rip Leo right out of our shared dream. I scrolled. The date in Leo's message was there in plain sight, his start date. It landed exactly 2 weeks before our planned investor pitch for our company. Our company. I leaned back in my chair, the cheap wood creaking under me. The apartment felt smaller, tighter, as if the walls had drawn in to listen. Rooftop, 3 years ago. The stars had been clear that night, the city lights fighting them but not quite winning. We'd been lying on our backs, jackets zipped up to our necks, the smell of tar and distant street food hanging in the air. We'll do it before we hit 30, Leo had said, holding up his pinky. Our own venture. No bosses. No selling out. I'd hooked my pinky with his, smiling so wide it hurt. Deal. Deal, he'd echoed, sealing it with a grin that felt like the safest promise in the world. Now, staring at my phone, I realized my jaw was tight enough to ache. My fingertips were ice against the smooth glass screen. Scrolling again was a mistake. Leo Zhang, gonna be grinding with Ethan's crew now. No sleep, no regrets, face with tears of joy. Ethan Voss, regrets are for people who don't win. I didn't realize how hard I was gripping the phone until my knuckles blanched. A knock broke the silence. I stood, crossing the living room in 3 strides. When I opened the door, she was there, Elena Chen, my wife on paper, my business partner in reality. The CEO of Chen Global Holdings. Perfect in a black silk blouse and tailored trousers, hair pulled into a sleek knot. I need the signed copy of the logistics contract, she said, voice even. Then her gaze flicked to my face. I must have looked, wrecked. Her eyes lingered on the phone in my hand, then returned to mine. Something unspoken passed in the space between us. Some people break pacts faster than promises, she said quietly, almost like she was talking to herself. You'll learn it's not always about you. Before I could respond, she stepped past me into the apartment, heading for the coffee table where I'd left the folder. She didn't pry. She didn't ask. But somehow, her presence slowed my pulse, pulled me back from the edge. Buzz. A new notification. This time from David. David, saw the news, you okay? I typed, yeah. Just surprised. Then deleted it. Typed again, fine. Just late. Sent. David, fine equals not fine. I'll check in tomorrow. A tiny smirk tugged at my mouth despite everything. And then the DM came in. Leo Zhang, you saw the chat, huh? No hard feelings. The cursor blinked in the reply box. I stared at it, my mind full of static, my heart alternating between heavy thuds and sharp stabs. No hard feelings. I set the phone down without typing a word. The city hummed outside, the glass towers watching, and I sat there in the blue light, wondering how quickly a promise could turn into nothing. The first thing I noticed when I woke was how heavy my body felt, like I'd been dragging it through water all night. My phone lay on the nightstand, screen dark, as if it had been holding its breath for me. I should have left it there. Instead, I reached for it. The feed opened with a burst of curated celebration. Photos of Leo in a charcoal suit, standing next to Ethan Voss on the top floor of Ardent Corp's headquarters. Leo's smile was all teeth and triumph. The caption was pure PR sugar, thrilled to begin this new chapter with the industry's finest minds. Here's to the future. There were hundreds of likes already. Congratulations from professors, former colleagues, and half our alumni network. The comments were full of rocket emojis and clapping hands. I scrolled past them too quickly, telling myself it was curiosity. But each flick of my thumb was just a deeper cut. The rooftop. That's where my mind went next, uninvited. We were both 22 then, barely out of school, broke enough to make instant noodles a luxury. We'd climbed the rusty fire escape behind Leo's apartment because the summer night was too perfect to waste indoors. The tar roof still radiated heat from the day, the air smelled faintly of fried dough from the food cart on the corner. Leo had brought a bag of stale popcorn and a bottle of warm soda, and I'd brought my laptop, not to work, just to show him the rough sketches of a product interface I'd been dreaming up. We lay on our backs, heads close, staring up at a sky where the city's light pollution left only the brightest stars visible. You know, he'd said, voice lazy, those stars aren't even there anymore. We're just seeing their light, traveling forever. That's kind of depressing, I'd laughed. No, it's the opposite. Even if you burn out, you can still shine for years after. That's what we're gonna do. He'd lifted his pinky, solemn and ridiculous all at once. Before 30, we launch our own thing. Something that outlasts us. I'd hooked my pinky with his, sealing it in the dark. That was the pact. Not just a handshake deal, it was a constellation we'd charted together. I set my phone down face down on the kitchen counter, but it didn't stop the hollow ache gnawing at my ribs. This startup wasn't just about Leo. It never was. It was about Daniel. My brother had been 26 when the car accident took him. He'd been working on an AI framework that could adapt and learn in ways no one in the market had imagined yet. His whiteboard was still in my storage unit, marker lines fading but ideas still alive. I'd promised myself I'd finish it one day, build something real out of his notes, something that would carry his name farther than he'd been able to go. Leo knew that. He knew it from the start. Coffee, Elena's voice broke my thoughts. I turned to find her leaning against the kitchen doorway. I hadn't heard her come in, though with her, that wasn't unusual. She moved like water in silk. I have a board review in an hour, she said, but I'm stopping at the lounge first. Come with me. I started to refuse, the automatic I've got work already forming, but she raised an eyebrow in that quiet way that meant she wasn't asking. The lounge in her corner office was all glass and quiet, the kind of space designed to make visitors feel both impressed and slightly off balance. She handed me a mug without asking how I took it. You're distracted, she said. Didn't sleep well, I deflected. Her gaze stayed on me, steady as a metronome. If you expect permanence in people, you'll go bankrupt emotionally before you make a profit. I stared into the dark coffee. That's a cheerful philosophy. It's a necessary one. She didn't elaborate, but the weight behind her words felt lived in. By the time I got back to my own office, David was calling. You sound like you've been run over, he said without preamble. Thanks. I mean it. But you're still you. And you're the damn engine, not the passenger, so get back in the driver's seat. I smiled despite myself. You rehearsed that, didn't you? Wrote it down and everything. We talked for another 10 minutes, his steady humor cutting through the fog in my head. By the time we hung up, I was standing at the window, looking out at the skyline. The sun was catching on the skyscrapers, each pane of glass flashing like it had something to prove. Maybe I did too. I opened my laptop. The pitch deck was still there, waiting. The notification came at 3:17 p.m. Ethan Voss tagged you in a post. I clicked before I could stop myself. It was a photo of him and Leo, champagne glasses in hand, with the caption, always room at the top, if you can make it here. A public jab. A starting gun. The city stretched out beneath me, and for the first time since last night, my hands didn't feel cold. The venue smelled like money. Not in the obvious way, no crisp bills or vault doors. But in the faint leather polish on the armchairs, the chilled air that hummed quietly from a hidden vent, the discreet waiters in tailored black moving like shadows. I was here on Chen Global Holdings ticket, wearing the suit Elena had insisted I buy last month. You look like someone worth listening to, she'd said, brushing invisible lint from the sleeve. I'd laughed, but tonight, the fabric felt heavier than cloth. My plan was simple: shake hands, swap cards, and talk about the concept of my startup without giving away the blueprint. Play nice, but plant seeds. That was before the doors opened and Leo walked in. Not just Leo and Ethan Voss. They moved as a pair, the way people do when they've been orbiting each other for a while. Leo's shoulders were squared, his smile a little too polished. Ethan was, well, Ethan. Crisp navy suit, hair sculpted like it belonged in a commercial, that easy, predatory smile he wore like it was made for him. I froze for a half second, long enough for Leo to catch my eye. His mouth tilted in a grin, familiar, but thinner than it used to be. "Hey," he said when they reached me, his voice casual but pitched just enough for nearby heads to turn. "Didn't expect to see you here." "Business Innovators Alumni Night," I said evenly. "We both got the invite." Ethan extended his hand. His grip was firm, calculated. "Ethan Voss. I've heard your name." "Likewise." I didn't give him the satisfaction of asking from where. He smiled like he'd already won. "Leo's been telling me about your project." I let that hang. "Sounds ambitious," Ethan went on. "Sometimes ambition's better served with the right team, though." He glanced at Leo, and Leo chuckled like they were sharing a private joke. A couple of execs drifted closer, forming a half-circle. Tobias from our alumni group asked, "So, what's this project you're cooking up?" I gave them the elevator pitch. Lean, precise, enough to spark interest without giving away Daniel's blueprint. Ethan sipped his champagne. "Sounds idealistic. In our world, speed and scalability beat purity every time." He didn't say my name, but every word was a dart aimed squarely at me. The moment stretched, then Elena arrived. You could feel it before you saw her, a shift in the room's temperature, heads turning like flowers towards sunlight. She was in deep emerald silk tonight, her hair down, the gleam of understated diamonds at her ears. She slid into the conversation like she'd been there all along. "Speed without direction," she said smoothly, "just means you get lost faster." Ethan's eyes flicked to her. "Elena Chen. I should have guessed you'd be defending your team." "I don't defend," she said, her smile delicate and dangerous. "I clarify. And I've seen enough of his work to know it will speak for itself." The group shifted subtly, the center of gravity tilting away from Ethan. He masked it well, a flash of teeth, a chuckle, but I saw the tightness in his jaw. Leo, on the other hand, looked like he couldn't decide whether to be impressed or uncomfortable. After a few more pleasantries, Elena touched my arm lightly. "We're leaving," she murmured, guiding me toward the exit. "Why?" I asked under my breath. She didn't break stride. "Never fight a wolf in his den unless you bring your own pack." We were almost to the door when Ethan called out behind us. "Hope you make it to the top," he said, voice carrying just enough. "If you can find the elevator." I didn't look back, but the words lodged in me like a splinter, not festering yet, but sharp enough to remind me they were there. By the time the city air hit my face, the sting had shifted. It wasn't humiliation anymore. It was fuel. David's text came while I was halfway through revising a slide about projected user growth. "David, last minute +1 for the Horizon Gala. Black tie. Come. Me, hard pass. David, there'll be free drinks and rich people pretending they're relatable. Also Elena will be there." He knew how to bait me. Not with the drinks, but with the implication that I'd be letting an opportunity slip if I didn't go. So, 45 minutes later, I was standing in front of the mirror, knotting a tie like it had personally wronged me. The Horizon Gala wasn't the stiff, sterile kind of corporate event I'd been at with Ethan last week. This was warmer, gold light spilling from chandeliers, the low hum of live jazz from a corner stage. Waiters drifted by with trays of champagne and miniature scallops. People laughed too loudly, spoke too close. David met me at the door, wearing a suit he clearly couldn't afford unless he'd sold a kidney. "You clean up nice," he said, handing me a glass before I could protest. "I'm here to network," I muttered. "Sure you are," he grinned. "Start with not looking like you'd rather be in a server room." We just struck up a conversation with a mid-level venture capitalist when the doors at the far end opened and in walked Leo. And, of course, Ethan. They came in laughing, Ethan's hand resting lightly on Leo's shoulder like they were old friends. The crowd's attention shifted subtly toward them. Leo looked different in this room, sharper suit, hair slicked back, a confidence that was more performative than genuine. For a second, I thought he might just nod politely and move on. But Leo's eyes caught mine, and the faintest smirk played on his lips. It happened in the middle of my conversation with the investor. Leo slid into our small circle, arm brushing mine in a way that was just a little too intentional. "Tom," he said to the investor, "I was hoping to catch you tonight. Ethan's got something you'll want to hear." He didn't even glance at me as he pulled Tom away toward the far corner. Ethan was already there, smiling like the trap had been set hours ago. I stood, glass in hand, watching the space Leo had just vacated. The noise of the room swelled around me, all champagne bubbles and polite applause from somewhere across the hall. The second blow came later, near the dessert table. I was half listening to David talk about his disastrous Tinder date when I heard Leo behind me, voice carrying just enough to hit my ears. "The thing about dreamers is, if they don't adapt, they end up dreaming alone." A few polite chuckles followed. I didn't turn around. Elena appeared beside me as if conjured. No greeting, no small talk, just her voice, low and precise. "Are you ready to stop giving him the power to set your pace?" I turned to her. Her eyes weren't asking for an answer, they were telling me the answer was already overdue. In the quiet corner by the coat check, I pulled out my phone. Leo's name sat there in my contact list, familiar and strange all at once. I opened the thread, hundreds of messages, memes, late-night ideas from the past year. My thumb hovered. Block contact. The tap was almost anticlimactic. But the moment it happened, something in my chest eased, like I'd unclenched a fist I didn't know I'd been holding for weeks. As David and I left, I glanced across the room. Leo stood with Ethan and a few others, phone in hand, brow furrowing just slightly. The blue light from the screen washed over his face, sharpening the edges I'd once known so well. Then the crowd shifted, and he was gone. The co-working space smelled faintly of burnt espresso and ambition. Exposed brick, Edison bulbs, recycled wood tables, the kind of place designed to make you feel like your big idea was only one latte away from greatness. I wasn't here for big ideas tonight. Just a small industry panel David had roped me into, supposedly, good for visibility. I was halfway through scanning the attendee list when my stomach dropped. Ethan Chen, panelist. And there, 3 rows from the front, sitting like he owned the place, was Leo. Perfect posture, crisp shirt, the faint shine of expensive cologne even from a distance. The panel started harmless enough. The moderator lobbed softball questions. What's the next big thing in tech? How do you keep a team motivated? Ethan spoke like he was dictating a press release. Every sentence is polished, rehearsed. Every second or third answer included some subtle barb. Unlike those who get lost in blue sky thinking without execution, his eyes flicking toward me like he wanted to make sure I caught it. Leo noticed too. Each time Ethan's gaze cut my way, Leo's lips twitched upward, like he was in on the punchline. Then came the Q&A. The moderator glanced around the room, ready to pick the next audience member. But Ethan leaned into his mic, voice smooth. "Actually," he said, "I'd love to hear from an old colleague. Alex, why don't you share your thoughts?" I felt 20 pairs of eyes swivel toward me. Ethan continued, the smile never touching his eyes. "Given your track record with projects not exactly making it to launch, how would you pivot to ensure success the next time?" The words were framed as curiosity. The tone was pure blade. Before I could answer, Leo laughed. Not loud, but enough to ripple through the front row. "Yeah," he said, turning toward Ethan, "that's something I've been telling them for years, big ideas, but..." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. The pause was the punch. Scattered laughter broke out, low and knowing. It was Elena's voice that sliced through the noise. "Funny," she said, leaning forward in her seat, coming from someone who's built his whole reputation on using other people's unfinished work as a springboard. A few people actually oohed. Someone's phone camera clicked. Elena didn't look at me. She looked at Ethan. Her tone was calm, but the kind that made you want to check for sharp edges. "At least Alex starts with their own ideas. Can you say the same?" The room shifted. A murmur rose. Ethan's jaw flexed. I stood, meeting Ethan's gaze. "Thanks for the question," I said evenly. "The difference between me then and me now is simple. I learned that execution isn't just about resources, it's about cutting the right people loose." It wasn't a mic drop, but it was clean. Measured. A few polite claps sounded. Someone in the back even said, "Fair point." After the panel, Ethan made a beeline for me. "That was cute," he said, smiling back in place. "Trying to spin it. But everyone knows." "Save it," I said, stepping past him. "I'm done playing for your audience." David was waiting near the door. Elena joined us, her eyes flicking toward Ethan and Leo still lingering at the front of the room. "They wanted you rattled," she said quietly. "You didn't give it to them." That night, back in my apartment, I scrolled through Instagram. Leo's latest post hit like a cold slap. A photo of him and Ethan clinking glasses, grinning like wolves. "Surround yourself with those who understand your vision." I stared at it until the screen dimmed, then set my phone face down on the desk. Whatever vision they had, I wasn't in it anymore. It was nearly midnight when my phone lit up. Leo calling. I stared at the screen, thumb hovering. The easy thing would have been to let it ring out, to watch his name fade into darkness. But part of me wanted to hear his voice, to know if there was even a sliver left of the person I used to trust. I swiped. "What?" His voice came warm, like nothing was broken. "Hey. Are you busy? Do you know what time it is?" "Relax," he said, chuckling like this was just another late-night brainstorm session from the old days. "I was thinking about tonight." You looked tense. "Tense," I repeated, flat. "Yeah, I mean, you kinda walked into Ethan's territory. He's been in this game longer. It's not personal." There it was. The rewrite. The airbrushing of everything that happened in that room. "You laughed," I said. Silence. Then, "Come on, Alex. It was just a joke." "No," I said. "It was you taking his side, in front of everyone. You're overthinking it. Ethan's got connections we need. I'm just, positioning." The word made my skin crawl. Positioning. As if loyalty was a pawn he could slide around the board. "You always said we'd build this together," I reminded him. "Now it's, we need him." "Since when did we mean you and Ethan?" Leo sighed like I was being unreasonable. "Look, you're good at ideas. But Ethan knows how to make them happen. If I just follow your lead." "That's not what He stopped, exhaled. "I'm trying to bring you in on something big. But you've gotta stop burning bridges." I laughed then, sharp and humorless. "The only bridge I'm burning is the one that keeps leading me back to you." "Don't be dramatic," he said, voice cooling. "I'm offering you a way back in." "I don't want to go back in." "Fine," he said after a pause. "But don't say I didn't try." The line went dead. I sat in the dark for a while, the silence pressing in. Outside, the city hummed faintly, oblivious to the shift that had just solidified in me. No more phone calls. No more group chats. No more wondering if he'd come around. I opened my laptop, pulled up my own project files, and started mapping out the next phase, my phase. Without him. Without Ethan. Somewhere between bullet points, I realized my hands had stopped shaking. Sunday mornings used to be quiet. Coffee, a slow scroll through headlines, maybe a podcast humming in the background. That morning, the coffee went cold before I even took the first sip. The notification blinked innocently enough. "Leo Chen tagged you in a post," but it might as well have been a flare in the night. It was a photo. High-res, filtered just enough to make the city skyline look cinematic. Leo and Ethan stood shoulder to shoulder on a rooftop bar, champagne flutes mid-clink. Behind them, a banner read, "Chen and Chen Innovations, Launch Night." At first, I thought maybe I was seeing it wrong. Chen and Chen. The caption was worse. "From a dream to reality. Couldn't have done it without my brother, Ethan. Here's to building the future, together. Hashtag Dream Team. Hashtag Visionaries. Hashtag No Limits." And there, buried at the bottom like a dirty secret, hashtag Full Circle. Full Circle, our phrase. The one we used for years, the shorthand for the day we'd finally make it. My thumb hovered over the heart icon, not to like it, but to bring up the menu. Mute? Block? Unfollow? I chose a block. Clean, final. The group chat exploded within minutes. "Elena, you seeing this?" "David, already blocked him." "Dude's dead to me." "Elena, it's like watching a stranger wear your clothes." I didn't reply. Instead, I clicked through the rest of Ethan's tagged photos. There they were, again and again, laughing over some private joke, shaking hands with investors I used to pitch to, standing in the exact co-working space where I'd once scribbled out the first drafts of our idea on a whiteboard. My whiteboard. My handwriting. The camera had caught the ghost of it in the background of one shot, faint blue marker lines, half wiped away. That was the moment something locked into place inside me. This wasn't about betrayal anymore. Betrayal required trust to still be in play. This was about claiming what was mine, not to take it back from them, but to make it bigger, louder, untouchable. By noon, I'd cleared my contacts list. By 3, I'd filed paperwork to formally register my own brand. By midnight, I'd rewritten my pitch deck from scratch. Leo and Ethan could toast each other under every city light they wanted. I was already charting a sky they'd never touch. I booked the ticket without thinking. No long debates, no pros and cons list. Just a one-way flight out of the city that had shrunk around me until it felt like a cage. The confirmation email sat in my inbox like a quiet dare. David drove me to the airport. The trunk was half empty, just one suitcase, my laptop bag, and the carry-on with my camera and notebooks. "You sure you don't want to send off?" he asked as we merged onto the highway. "This is the send-off," I said. "Clean. Simple. Cold," he muttered. "That too." The city skyline slid past in the rearview mirror. Somewhere in that glass and steel sprawl, Leo was probably already spinning a new version of our history over drinks with Ethan. The thought didn't sting anymore, it just felt irrelevant. I'd meant to leave without seeing him. I really had. But fate has a habit of staging its own exits. We crossed paths at the security line. He looked different in the fluorescent light, tired, maybe. Or maybe I was just seeing him without the filter of nostalgia. "Alex?" His voice was surprised, but not warm. "Where are you going?" "Out." "That's not an answer. It's the only one you get." He stepped closer, suitcase rolling behind him. "We could still." "No," I said, sharper than I expected. "You made your choice. Now I'm making mine. Ethan and I. I don't care what you and Ethan are." I shifted my bag onto my shoulder. "We're done. Not just the work, us. All of it." For a moment, I thought he might argue. But then his jaw set, and he just nodded like he was filing my decision away as a business note. "Good luck," he said. "Yeah," I replied. "I won't need it." By the time the plane lifted off, the city below had dissolved into a grid of glittering veins. I stared out at the clouds, letting the hum of the engines drown out the last echoes of his voice. Somewhere past this horizon, I'd build something that no one could take, not by charm, not by betrayal, not by rewriting history. The breakaway wasn't just leaving. It was arriving somewhere he couldn't follow. The first thing I noticed was the air. It smelled different here, not like car exhaust and burnt coffee grounds, but open, unhurried. Salt from the nearby harbor tangled with the scent of rain-soaked brick. I walked out of the station with my suitcase trailing behind me, the wheels clicking over cobblestone. This city wasn't built for straight lines. Streets curved into hidden courtyards. Alleyways ended in unexpected bursts of green. Everything was a surprise. The apartment was small but bright, a top-floor loft with 2 skylights and creaky wooden floors that sang under every step. I dropped my bags and lay back on the bare mattress, watching the sky through the glass above. It didn't matter that I had no furniture, no fixed plan, no safety net. I had distance. By the end of the first week, I'd found a corner cafe that didn't mind me camping out with my laptop. I was there almost every morning, mapping out my own venture, not a salvage operation of the old dream, but something entirely mine. I named it after the first constellation my father ever taught me. He used to say stars are just stories waiting to be retold. Every so often, I'd get a ping from an old mutual contact. A tagged photo. An article. A repost of Leo and Ethan smiling at some gala, shaking hands with venture capitalists. I didn't click anymore. I didn't need to. Just seeing the thumbnail was enough to remind me, their story was theirs. Mine was here. The rules in this city felt different, too. People didn't talk about networking, they just talked. No one asked what you could offer before they asked your name. By the second month, I'd joined a small collective, designers, coders, writers. We met twice a week in a converted warehouse that smelled faintly of sawdust and ambition. Nobody cared about titles. You were judged on what you made, not who you knew. One night, walking home past the lit harbor, I realized I hadn't thought about Leo in days. And when I did, it wasn't with the sharp twist in my chest that used to follow his name. It was just a memory. Like a song you used to have on repeat, but haven't played in years. I was learning to live under new skies. And the rules I set now were mine alone. It happened in the least dramatic place possible, the produce aisle of a grocery store. I was comparing two brands of olive oil when a voice I hadn't heard in months slid into my peripheral hearing. Alex? I didn't need to turn. My spine recognized the weight of it before my mind caught up. When I did, there he was, Leo, looking almost exactly as I remembered, but somehow smaller. Not physically, he still had that tall, easy posture. But the shine was dulled, like a suit that's been dry cleaned too many times. I didn't know you were here, he said, as if the city belonged to him and I'd wandered in uninvited. Guess you do now, I replied, sliding the olive oil into my basket. He glanced at my cart, bread, vegetables, a bottle of wine. Normal things. The kind of cart you fill when you're living, not running. So, how's life? Good. I said it plainly, no theatrics. Just true. He tried for a smile, the kind that used to disarm me in an instant. Now it was just an expression, another move in a play I'd already seen. You know, Ethan and I. Don't, I cut in. We're not doing that. Doing what? Replaying the old script. For a moment, we stood there, the hum of the refrigeration units filling the silence. I could see him searching my face for some crack, some sign that I might be pulled back into orbit. There wasn't one. Finally, he nodded, slow. You've changed. I know. At the checkout, I caught my reflection in the convex mirror above the register. Same face, same eyes, but steadier. When I walked out, the air felt crisp, almost new. I realized my heart wasn't racing. I wasn't shaking. The encounter hadn't unsettled me at all. It had only confirmed what I already knew. I was no longer standing in his shadow. It was raining the night he showed up. Not a soft drizzle, but a storm that hammered the windows and drowned the city in silver noise. I just finished a late call with the collective, the kind where ideas pour faster than you can write them down, when someone buzzed my intercom. Alex, it's me. Even through the distortion, I knew. I should have pretended I wasn't home. But curiosity is a stubborn thing, even when you know better. When I opened the door, Leo stood there in a soaked coat, hair plastered to his forehead. He looked like he'd sprinted here from wherever he was, though knowing him, it was probably just from the curb. Can I come in? I hesitated just long enough for him to notice, then stepped aside. The loft was warm, light pooling over the sketches and prototypes spread across my table. He glanced at them but didn't comment, his focus was on me. I've been thinking, he began, shrugging out of his coat. About us. About what we built. We could still. No, I said, already moving toward the kitchen. We couldn't. You haven't even heard of my offer. That's because I don't need to. My life isn't a negotiation anymore, Leo. He followed me, hands open in that half-sincere, half-calculated way I knew too well. I'm serious. I can get you in on a new deal. Bigger than what we planned before. Ethan's on board, but I'm not, I cut in, pouring tea into 2 mugs out of habit, then sliding him away from me. You still think this is about opportunity. It's not. It's about trust. He flinched, barely, but enough. We could fix that. No, you can't. I sipped my tea. Trust isn't a product you can rebuild with the right pitch deck. For a long moment, the rain filled the silence between us. Then he tried a different angle. Are you happy? Yes. And for the first time, I realized it wasn't an answer meant to push him away, it was simply true. When he left, his footsteps echoed down the stairs, slow and heavy. I closed the door before they faded completely. Outside, the storm kept battering the skylight, but inside, everything felt still. By the time spring came, I barely noticed Leo's absence. He didn't stop existing, I just stopped tracking him. The muted pings of mutual contacts drifted past without landing. Even the group chat that once defined my mornings had gone silent in my notifications. I hadn't muted it. I'd simply forgotten to check. My life has its own rhythm now. Mondays were for meetings with the collective. Wednesdays, the harbor walks with David, where we'd swap stories over paper cups of coffee. Saturdays, late-night build sessions in the warehouse, music humming low in the background while the city outside pulsed and quieted. One afternoon, Anna, the latest designer to join us, leaned over my workbench. You're hard to get a hold of, she teased, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. I'm busy building something worth answering for, I said. She smiled. Good answer. Every so often, I'd stumble across something that reminded me of Leo, a particular cologne on a stranger in the crowd, the glint of champagne flutes in a storefront window. They were just passing moments now. Background details in a much bigger picture. In April, I got a message from him. No greeting, no explanation. Just, "We should talk." I stared at it for a long time. Then I deleted it. No reply. No screenshot. No ceremony. The real ending wasn't loud. It didn't demand a confrontation or some climactic speech. It was simply the day I stopped thinking of him when I thought about my future. And when the sun went down over the harbor that evening, painting the water in gold and violet, I realized, the book had closed. I was already in another one. It started with an invitation. Anna had been after me for weeks to attend one of the rooftop mixers she organized for her photography circle. I'd dodged the last two, claiming deadlines. This time, she wouldn't let me. "Wear something you can dance in," she said, shoving a folded note with the address into my palm. The building was older than it looked from the street, brick, weather-worn, its rooftop wrapped in strings of warm lights that swayed in the breeze. From up there, the city felt softer, less like something you fought against and more like something that could hold you. That's where I met Jules. She was leaning against the railing, sketching the skyline in a battered notebook, her drink untouched beside her. When I asked what she was drawing, she turned the page toward me, not the buildings, but the spaces between them. The gaps. "It's the negative space that makes the picture," she said. Something about that stuck with me. We ended up talking most of the night, about travel, about creative work, about the quiet fear of wanting something too much. There was no push, no angle. Just conversation, the way it's supposed to be. By the time the lights dimmed, I knew she was someone I wanted to see again. 2 days later, I got a message. Not from Jules. From Leo. "I'm outside your building. We need to talk." Against my better judgment, I went down. He was leaning against the hood of his car, the same make and model from before, but this time there was something restless in his stance. "You look different," he said. "Happier, maybe." "I am." He exhaled, slow. "Alex, I made mistakes. Big ones. But I don't want to lose you for good. You already have." His jaw tightened, like he wanted to argue, but he didn't. Instead, he took a step closer, searching my eyes for any sign of the person who used to wait for him. I let him look. And then I stepped back. That night, I texted Jules. Nothing dramatic, just, "Free this weekend?" Her reply came almost instantly. "Always." And for the first time in years, I felt the future tilt toward something new. The sea was calm that morning. From the pier, the water stretched out in a sheet of steel blue, the horizon a thin, perfect line. It reminded me of the nights Leo and I used to sit on rooftops, staring at the city lights as if they were constellations we could reach if we just stretched far enough. Back then, I thought we were chasing the same star. I know better now. Jules was beside me, sketchbook balanced on her knees. She wasn't drawing the ocean. She was drawing the pier, the rusted bolts, the way the wood warped in the sun, the details most people stepped over. "You've got that look again," she said without looking up. "What look?" "The one where you're not here, but you're not there either." I smiled. Just thinking about how far I've come. And it was true. I'd built something, a career on my terms, a circle of people who didn't just want me when it was convenient. I wasn't living in the shadow of a shared dream anymore. I'd built my own light. Every now and then, a message from Leo still slipped through. They'd grown shorter over time. The last one had been just a single word, "Sorry." I hadn't replied. Not because I was angry, but because the story was over. You don't rewrite the last chapter once you've put the book down. The wind shifted, carrying the scent of salt and something faintly sweet from the harbor cafes. Jules tapped my arm. "Come on. I want to show you something." I followed her, and for the first time in years, I wasn't thinking about what I'd left behind, only about the horizon, and whatever waited just beyond it. And just like that, Leo was nothing more than a dim light in a sky full of new stars.